It's a write-off for them.
How is it a write-off?
They just write it off.
Write it off what?
It's a write-off for them. How is it a write-off? They just write it off. Write it off what? It's a write-off for them. How is it a write-off? They just write it off. Now, notice, this is a noun, and we use a hyphen. Now we're using it as a verb, so it has to be two separate words. So some of you did a great job. You caught when it was a noun and when it was a verb. So I'm really happy. So great job. Just pay attention to that in the future. They just write it off. Write it off. Write it off what? Write it off what? It's a write-off for them. What's the big deal? Don't worry about it. Come on, it's $400 for the United States Postal Service, and it's actually not even their money. It's insurance. It's a write-off. Don't worry. So, and what this basically means is the post office is going to give Jerry $400. So if we look at the accounting for the post office, it sees that the post office has paid Jerry $400. But in the accounting methods for tax purposes, what the post office will do is they'll reduce their income by $400 and give that to Jerry. And that way, they actually reduce their tax burden. So the post office, they don't want to give Jerry $400, but it's a write-off. It's not, they didn't lose everything. This is the idea of a write-off. Okay, so if you have a small business, so for example, I have a business and I have these computers. So when I fix my computers, it's an expense. I can put that in my accounting books, and I fixed my computer. It's an expense, and that will reduce the amount of taxes that I have to pay. When I moved here from Minnesota, one of my computers disappeared. It's gone. So in this situation, I will claim that as a loss. I lost the computer, That will be a write-off. It just disappeared. I don't know where it is, and I'll be able to decrease my income by the value of that computer. Does that make sense? This is a write-off. You write that amount off your income. Your income is, $40,000, and I'm going to write off $400. Now my income is $39,600. I wrote off $400. You have to write it down, but your income does go down. Does that make sense? I hope so. It's a write-off for them. What's the big deal? Jerry doesn't believe it. How is it a write-off? How can the post office write off my stereo? That doesn't make any sense. It's my stereo. They just write it off. They just do, Jerry. Duh. Don't ask questions. That's business stuff. I don't know. Write it off what? What are they writing it off? Good question.
It's a write-off for them.
How is it a write-off?
They just write it off.
Write it off what?
It's a write-off for them.
How is it a write-off?
They just write it off.
Write it off what?